I know you love brands because I love brands, and I'm not talking about luxury brands. I'm talking about brands that growing up you've had a connection with and have had an emotional attachment to. I'll give you an example. I mean, growing up in India, I loved to have Thumbs Up and Gold Spot, which was our equivalent of Coke and Fanta because we didn't have those brands in India at the time when I was growing up. And it resonated with me as being with my friends, having fun, being together with family on the weekend, because that was the only time I was actually allowed to have a soda. And then there's the Amul cheese and Amul butter, which is iconic. It had its own billboard. Everybody knew the Little Lotta Amul mascot. The brand had so much correlation with politics and with events and cricket and everything because the advertising was so on point. And when I talked to my friends in Canada when we were there, we loved Dairy Queen and Michael J. Fox. And then when you look at some of my friends in the US, they talk about Aritzia and they talk about Chick-fil-A, and they have a lot of emotional connect to brands like Chick-fil-A. And when I talk to my friends in China, it's all Chanel, 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 Chanel. So it's a slightly different ethos. My point here is that brands can often have a very close connection to people, and there might be a restaurant which I love and I always want to go to because I love the brand. But things do change. I'll give you an example, a very local Dubai example of a little cafe that used to be in Mamzar area. And there was a boy called Philly, or his nickname was Philly, and he was like a really fun kid at school who took over his dad's cafe. And he created like a saffron-based chai or tea, created Philly chai, which became super iconic, and he completely overhauled his dad's sort of cafe brand and expanded it to many geographical locations. Now, sometimes that could be as a result of a family and a sort of generational change, but sometimes the change in branding could also be because you were acquired by a different brand. So for example, when PayPal was part of eBay, as you guys probably know, and then it was hived off and PayPal had to survive on its own, and it had to create its own brand identity, and it became super successful because it was the only payment gateway we had in those days where you could transfer money to somebody if you bought or sold something from an individual without having to do a bank transfer. And then there are other brands like Burberry, which was known to be relatively boring, known for its trench coat, but then Burberry modernized and created a whole bunch of different lines that became very popular. And then we also had other brands like Kia Motors, which started off as being sort of a very kind of domestic kind of brand with one type of product, but very quickly evolved to have very sort of cutting edge products that were also knocking on the door of the luxury products which people didn't want to pay for or couldn't afford, but Kia was offering an extremely amazing product. And then you had Lego as well, that sort of repositioned itself because they went from being like a supersonic like toy company where you had to buy all these 300 pieces and put them together, right? To being much more of a digital gaming kind of company and more upbeat and appealing to a wider range of kids and teenagers rather than just sort of a certain type of market. So sometimes your brand might do really well and survive, and other times you might have to reposition your brand because you don't want it to be dull, you don't want to lose your following. There is a value to it. So I guess the moral of the story here is kind of that whilst you might be very attached to your own brand and your own slogan and your own logo and your own ethos of your brand, you might have to rejig it to bring back the love that people felt using those services or using that brand or its food or the clothing or whatever that might be. So that's it. Repositioning your brand sometimes can be the key to success and to survival. And that's it from Think Tank this week. Thank you so much for watching.